First of all, YouTube, I'd like to say there's nothing tactical at all in this video. This probably looks like your grandfather's single-shot shotgun. However, this is a 2008 H&R1871 handy rifle, chambered in 500 Magnum, and it is unloaded. We'll verify that it's unloaded with a chamber flag. And this is a Smith & Wesson 500 snap cap. It's inert. It's not a bullet. It's not a live shell. But what we're going to do tonight, I'm going to change the stock that came on the gun, which has been deer hunting and is banged up, and maybe I'll refinish it, maybe I won't, but I'm going to change it out to a composite mossy oak camo stock. And the first thing you need to do before you do anything gunsmith related, or anything any lunatic politician could consider gunsmithing, is check your state and local laws and ordinances. And in the jurisdiction I am currently in, you can do this on your own gun, and this is my own gun. The first thing you do is you remove the screw on the bottom of the forend, the foregrip. You remove that screw, you lift up on the front of the handguard and pull slightly forward. Remove the forearm. Press your release lever. Separate the barrel from the stock and the receiver, and we'll just set the barrel aside for a moment. Next, on the buttstock pad, there's two little holes. NEF and H&R over the years used many different types of buttstock pads. This is what I call the captured, because the screws contained inside the rubber of the buttstock, and it's not exposed. But there's been many variations of the pads, different pads on different guns at different times. They use different ones. Some of them, the screws are exposed on the end. But the NEF and H&R, it's very simple to change the stock on them. It's not any kind of complicated job at all. And on most stock bolts, or most stock bolt, the NEF and the H&R have a bolt with a 9/16 SAE socket head on. So you want to use a 3/8 extension to reach in to get it. Most other shotguns, or any kind of two-piece stock, usually the stock bolt is a flat screw, a flathead screw that you really need a special gunsmithing screwdriver to remove, because the automotive screwdrivers have a taper to them, but NEF and H&R solve this problem by putting in a bolt. And it's quite simple and quite easy to work on because of it. Now, while I have the stock completely removed from the receiver, I'd like to take this opportunity to show you this. I hope you can see that, YouTube. This is an NEF H&R SB2 receiver. And this is the only way I know to tell the difference between the SB1 and the SB2. There's holes in the bottom and in the top of the SB2 receiver. It's basically skeletonized. Alright? The SB1 receiver is basically a flat surface, all except the hole that the stock bolt goes into. Now, it's very important that you don't mix and match the SB1 and the SB2 receivers, because the SB1 is essentially a shotgun receiver. The SB2 is a much stronger and takes much higher pressures, and it is the rifle caliber receiver. Now, personally, I only use the SB2 on the pistol calibers, the 500 Smith & Wesson, the 44 Magnum, and the 357 Magnum. The reason I do that is because H&R1871, until 2007, they would only install the 44 Magnum on the SB2 receiver that's skeletonized with the holes, because it held the higher pressure. In 2008 to 2015, when they ceased production, February 27, 2015, they were putting the 44 Magnum on the SB1 receiver. And while a lot of people will tell you that it's possible because of the pressures, I myself only shoot the 44 Magnum, the 500 Smith & Wesson, and the 357 on an SB2 receiver. But that's my 2 cents, and I could be completely wrong, but that's what I do. Just to illustrate this, now I grabbed the wrong barrel. This is my 2007 44 Magnum receiver. Oh, excuse me. No, it's my Survivor barrel. Never mind. This, YouTube, is my 2007 44 Magnum barrel, and it's clearly labeled on the barrel SB2. Now, having said that, still, people change barrels, they change receivers. Make sure you know whether you have the SB2 that's skeletonized, that takes the higher pressure, or you have the SB1 that's essentially the shotgun receiver and will not take the higher pressures. Just an additional safety note, you could run across a pre-86 receiver that has been damaged. That should have been a solid flush receiver, but at some point, either in the production process or somewhere in this receiver's life, the top of the receiver has been punched through. So when you're checking these, make sure it's the skeletonized double hole and not an older pre-86 with some kind of damage to it. Now, also while I have the stock off, I want to get this bolt out first of all. The stock bolt. Okay. The original wooden stock comes in at a weight of 1 pound, 3 3/4 ounces. The stock I am replacing it with, this mossy oak, it's higher comb, it's synthetic. I actually think it was a Cabela's exclusive. It's coming in at 13 1/8 ounce. So it is definitely lighter, and while in a lot of cases a lighter stock would be an advantage, in this case on the 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, I probably am going to have to end up weighting this stock somehow. And just for kicks, the original forearm, 4 1/8 ounce. The replacement, 4 ounces. So only an 1/8 of an ounce difference in the forearm, which really doesn't make any significant difference at all. It's just the added weight. The heavier the handy rifle and basically all the NEF and H&R single shots, they're so light, there's just not much to them, that they have more recoil than a conventional receiver gun versus a break action receiver. But now we'll marry up. There's a little point right here in the receiver and a little point right here on the stock, and every NEF H&R single shot has got one of those, and it's just to line up, it's just to help line up the stock. And just for comparison, here's a Forester buttstock screwdriver that you would use on a gun that had a screw instead of the bolt. The way you date the H&R and the NEF 1871s, they started production in 1986. They actually were in operations for 5 years before they incorporated, and that's created a lot of confusion. The 86 to 90 guns, some people don't think they exist, but the serial number system is basically A in 1986, counting every year with the letter on the second number of the serial number, through Y. And Y is up till May of 2008. And somebody's probably already asking, well, that doesn't add up, A to Y, 86 to 2008. Well, they skipped letter O and letter Q to avoid identification confusion, where they would think O and Q was actually a 0. And the first letter, and that's the second letter of the serial number, that's how you date them, from 86 to 2008, and actually May of 2008. But the first number, or first digit in the serial number is either an H for H&R or an N for NEF. But whether it's an H or an N, the guns are identical. They were made in the same factory, same owners. They're the same thing. Now, H&R 1881, after the original H&R went out of business in 1986 and the factory was torn down, H&R 1871 started, and they operated as themselves, H&R 1871, until 2000, when they were purchased by Marlin. And from 2000 until 2007, Marlin operated H&R and NEF, the same company. And actually, some of the Marlin guns, particularly the rifle barrels, the Marlin barrels were just a little tighter. The Marlin barrels were just a little better. And I have several of the Marlin rifles, Marlin era rifles, and they're quite good. The only real knock against the Marlin era was the finish on the barrels. They were real prone to rusting. Sometimes they'd even rust before they were sold at the gun shop. You just want to keep a light coat of oil on. But then in, I think it was the end of 2007, they were purchased, and I'm not putting in the original screw. I'm putting in a knurled takedown knob for speed of disassembly. And I bought this off of eBay, and I'm pretty sure it was overpriced, but they're hard to find these days. Actually, they ceased production was ceased on these and on all of it in February 27th of 15, and certain things are getting harder and harder to find for them, you know. But eBay's really the best place to find them. And actually, I don't know much about this stock. I think it's a Cabela's exclusive, I think. That's what somebody told me. It's got an APG mark on it. And that's all I really know about it. But with the wooden stocks, you can put a lead or steel piece of not pipe, but solid round stock in the hole. I'm just going to have to come up with something to weight this with. And if anybody knows what this stock really is, put a comment down below in YouTube. I'd appreciate it. Oh, and post May of 2008, you cannot date the NEF or the H&R rifles or shotguns. There's no date code on them at all. That was when they were, that's when they were under Remington, which is actually quite funny because I have an 870 that is in the 2-3 year period where they had no date code on it. So I think that's funny. But if you got a Remington, if you have a Remington produced one, the serial numbers scheme does not apply, and it's, I'm gonna have to check my notes. Under the Remington serial number scheme, CAC is an SB1 receiver, and CBA is an SB2 receiver. But again, no way to date them. The way they originally intended was you to call the factory, and the factory would look up your serial number and tell you the date. But since there's no more factory, since it ceased production, I don't know if you called Remington what they would do. And I've got to say, I'm not, as much as I hate to see this single shot go down, because honestly, I mean, there's other break action single shots out there, but these are the ones that everybody remembers from their youth. These are the ones your grandparents had. It was a real common gun for a long time. No, not the 500 Smith & Wesson. It wasn't. Actually, the 500 Smith & Wesson was only, I want to say, was only produced 4 years. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, the 500 Smith & Wesson wasn't produced very long. And honestly, other than deer hunting, or just saying you have a 50 caliber, it's not a very practical firearm. There's much more practical choices than the 500 Smith & Wesson. And I've got the 44 Magnum 2007, and I mean it's a great shooting gun. You can do a lot of things with the pistol calibers. Well, hey YouTube, I hope I didn't drone on too long. I appreciate you watching. You have a nice day now. Bye-bye.